In the beginning, think of a big, beautiful, empty land with mountains, forests, lakes, animals, and fish, but no people. This was America 16,000 years ago. The initial inhabitants of Alaska probably arrived from Asia about that period. As they moved south, they gave rise to the Native Americans of North America, as well as the Maya, Aztec, Inca, and other Central and South American peoples. In a similar manner, the Inuit, Eskimos, migrated to Canada and the Arctic. However, there are currently very few of these peoples in America. European settlers first arrived in America in the 16th century, and shortly after that, they brought slaves from Africa to labor for them. Until the middle of the 20th century, a sizable number of immigrants came from all over the world. The formerly vacant terrain was now populated by individuals who spoke various languages and held varied viewpoints. Currently, only 3 nations make up North America. There were almost a lot more than just the USA, Canada, and Mexico. Additionally, the 300 million inhabitants of the United States' 50 states are not all alike. Approximately 67% of people identify as white, 13% as Hispanic, Spanish-speaking, 13% as Black, 4% as Asian, and 1% as Native American. The majority of them are English speakers, although it differs from the English that people in Britain use, and many Americans are Spanish speakers first and foremost. So how did the USA come to be? How did it develop? What sort of nation is it today? These and other inquiries are addressed. The Age of Exploration. Amerigo Vespucci, an Italian trader who sailed to South America between 1499 and gave the continent its name, was not the first European to attempt the perilous voyage over the Atlantic. Around the year 1000, Vikings arrived from Scandinavia in Vinland, perhaps Canada or New England, but they did not stay. The Caribbean was then prepared in 1492 by a daring Italian sailor by the name of Christopher Columbus, who was looking for a sea route from Europe to India. Because he believed he had arrived in India, Columbus referred to the Native Americans as Indians. After telling others about his exploits upon his return to Europe, seamen like Cabot and Cartier decided to follow Columbus across the Atlantic. Europeans also came to fish in America's productive waters. The French, Dutch, and British did not arrive in North America until the 17th century, with the French settling in Quebec, the Dutch in New York, and the British in Virginia and New England. Over the Atlantic, 2 distinct groups of English people traveled. The Jamestown colony in Virginia was founded by the first group, and although living was extremely difficult for them, they hoped to locate gold there. Many of them perished during the first winter because there was so little food available. Pocahontas, the daughter of the Native American chief, subsequently became close to Captain John Smith and helped the other English citizens. She later relocated to England with her husband, John Rolfe. Thankfully, tobacco helped to save the young colony. Virginia made it simple to grow tobacco, and smoking quickly became more and more popular. Instead of continuing their search for gold, the colonists began to plant tobacco, which they then shipped to Europe. They soon started bringing in Africans as slaves to help them with their continuous expansion. The Pilgrim Fathers. In 1614, John Smith traveled to the region of America that he dubbed New England. He said it was a great place to live when he got back to London. 101 more Englishmen, women, and children arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. They are known as the Pilgrims or Pilgrim Fathers, and they possessed fervent religious beliefs. They traveled to America in a ship known as the Mayflower because they did not want to reside in England because they disagreed with the English church. They farmed the land and traded in and sold fur. The idea that everyone was created equal, and that is why there were no slaves. The Pilgrims also frequently fell ill and went without food. Almost all of them perished in the first year. However, they received assistance from certain Native Americans, particularly a man by the name of Squanto. He spent some time in England during his captivity in Europe in 1605. Thus, he had a working knowledge of the language. He demonstrated how to hunt and cultivate maize to the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims celebrated their first self-produced food with a large feast in the autumn of 1621. On the fourth Thursday in November, Americans continue to commemorate this day as Thanksgiving, one of the most significant holidays of the year. Individuals frequently travel great distances to be with their families. We have a substantial supper that includes turkey and pumpkin pie, two of the things the Pilgrim Fathers discovered in America. The War of Independence. In the 17th century, an increasing number of Britons immigrated to the east coast of North America, founding colonies in Maryland, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Hampshire, North and South Carolina, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. In the 18th century, when the British also conquered New York and Delaware from the Dutch, Georgia followed. There were 13 colonies along North America's east coast in 1770, and they were all under British rule. Although Britain was far away, the colonists were resentful of the heavy taxes their government forced them to pay. A group of men in Boston, Massachusetts, threw 3 42 boxes of tea into the water in December 1773 because they did not want to pay the British tax on it. The Boston Tea Party was this. The British administration was now enraged, and in April 1775, some Americans engaged some British soldiers in battle in the Massachusetts towns of Lexington and Concord, close to Boston. Before the British forces could return to Boston, more and more Americans began to arrive. A few months later, with the Battle of Bunker Hill, close to Boston, it became abundantly evident that Britain and its American colonies were at war. George Washington, a wealthy farmer from Virginia, rose to lead the American army. People use a story about Washington to demonstrate his integrity. They claim that when he was a young boy, he chopped down a tree, which enraged his father. He responded, "I cannot tell a lie. I cut down the tree," when his father questioned him about it. The colonies didn't express a desire for complete independence until the summer of, in the well-known Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson claimed that King George III had failed to be a decent king because he had denied his subjects rights to life, freedom, and happiness. The 4th of July, the anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, is another important American holiday. In October 1781, the Americans officially declared victory, and 2 years later they were granted independence. They elected George Washington as their first leader in 1789. Despite his desire to return to his estate at Mount Vernon and live a tranquil life, he served as president for barely 2 years before passing away in 1799. During the American Revolutionary War, the terms United States of America and American were first employed. The original 13 states of the United States were formed from the 13 colonies. After being elected as the third president in 1803, Jefferson purchased a sizable tract of land in the Midwest from France. It was only $15 million in price and 5 times as large as from France. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were then dispatched by Jefferson to cross North America all the way to the Pacific. The two men traveled 13,000 kilometers between 1804 and with the assistance of a young Native American lady named Sacagawea. They discovered several creatures, plants, and fish that were unknown to Europeans and produced maps of the rivers, mountains, and terrain they crossed. The USA acquired Florida from Spain in 1819. The size of the United States had increased by twofold since, and by 1848, when it had defeated Mexico in the Southwest and Texas, it had grown once again. It now extended over 5,000 kilometers from the Atlantic to the Pacific. In the end, the American government paid Russia $7.2 million for the land northwest of Canada, and in 1867, it became the state of Alaska. The stars and stripes of the American flag originally appeared during the American Revolutionary War. It features a stripe for each of the first 13 states, and there are now 50 stars because one was added whenever a new state joined. Hawaii, a group of stunning islands located in the Pacific about 4,000 kilometers west of California, was added as the 51st state of the USA, adding the final star. The Civil War. By the middle of the 19th century, the young nation had 31 million citizens. But the North and the South had significant differences, and a dreadful conflict broke out in 1861. At least 600,000 individuals lost their lives to sickness or combat. Because slaves were not permitted in the North, the war started because the Southern states kept slaves to labor in the cotton fields. People from the North argued against the desire of those from the South to keep slaves in the West's new frontiers. Abraham Lincoln was chosen as the 16th President of the United States in 1860. He was a member of the Republican Party, which opposed slavery. South Carolina declared its desire for independence on December 24th. The other Southern states quickly followed. At Fort Sumter, the combat broke out on April 12, 1861. The South was wealthy because they sold their cotton to Britain and possessed some of the best warriors, including the well-known Robert E. Lee. However, there were more factories and men in the North. Lincoln was another of their presidents and one of the best the USA has ever had. Although he was up on a farm in Kentucky, he put a lot of effort into his education. Lincoln emphasized freedom and rights while strengthening the Republican Party. At Gettysburg in Pennsylvania, when the North's men triumphed in a crucial battle, Lincoln spoke about the valiant warriors who had perished. This declaration of government of the people, by the people, for the people, became known as the Gettysburg Address. The North was able to win the war thanks to two legendary troops. A well-known song that recalls General Sherman describes how he led 60,000 of his soldiers on a 400-kilometer march from Atlanta, Georgia, to the Atlantic coast. The Southern troops found it difficult to unite and turn the North once he had carved a wide swath through their lines in this manner. Sherman led the American army after the conflict. At Appomattox in 1865, when the South, led by Lee, admitted defeat in the war, General Ulysses S. Grant stood in for the North. Lee's soldiers did not have to go to prison since Grant treated them quite fairly. Later, in 1868, he was elected president. Tragically, John Wilkes Booth, a man who despised Lincoln and was enraged by the war, shot President Lincoln at the theater on April 14, 1865, 5 days after the war's conclusion. The debate over black people's rights persisted after Lincoln's death because the new president was unable to unite the North and the South. A family of 4 daughters living at home in the North with their mother while their father is away at war is the subject of Louisa May Alcott's renowned book, Little Women, which she wrote during the American Civil War. Another well-known book, and subsequently movie, about the war is Gone with the Wind, which was published in It depicts the tale of Scarlett O'Hara, a wealthy young woman whose life is wrecked by the war while she is living happily in the southern state of Georgia. The Wild West. More and more individuals moved to live in the American West during the 19th century. The Wild West that you see on television and in movies is populated by cowboys, Indians, and battles. No more than 40,000 cowboys existed in reality, and actual cowboys hardly ever engaged in gunfights or battles with Indians. At least 25% of them were black or Mexican and put quite a lot of effort into their task caring for the cows. To the railroad communities in Kansas and Missouri, cows were transported from Texas. The meat was then shipped to the east for sale after the cows were slaughtered there and brought to Chicago. After roughly 30 years, the government distributed the land to farmers and their families, almost eradicating the cowboys. More than 500,000 farmers migrated to the West between 1862 and 1900, where they established new farms and produced food. The Ingalls family was one of the families that emigrated to the West. Laura Ingalls Wilder, a member of the family, wrote books like Little House on the Prairie to chronicle their voyage. These farmers had an extremely difficult life, especially during the winter. The farms were rather alone, but the railways soon started to reunite people. Americans could then travel by train all the way across the country after the railway from the east and the railway from the west met in Utah in 1869. Prior to the construction of the railway, the renowned Pony Express was used to transport mail throughout the nation from 1860 to 1861. Horses and riders were waiting in various locations. One man rode for nearly 120 kilometers while carrying a bag of letters before passing it to the following man. In this manner, it only took letters 10 days or less to travel throughout the nation. Buffalo Bill Cody was a well-known rider. He eventually joined the military and took up hunting. He is said to have killed 4,280 buffalo in a single year. With the well-known cowgirl Annie Oakley, Buffalo Bill launched his Wild West show in the 1880s, a sort of traveling theater. Native Americans. When the Europeans first arrived in North America in the 15th century, there were roughly 2 million Native Americans living there. They spoke more than 2,000 distinct languages and belonged to 300 different groupings. Sadly, Native Americans were slain by Europeans in battle and by the diseases they spread. A group of Native Americans in the 18th century meet a tragic end in the movie The Last of the Mohicans, which is based on the James Fenimore Cooper novel. The Native Americans, who are referred to as Indians in cowboy movies, actually resided there. For instance, they included the Cheyenne, the Blackfoot, and the Sioux, sometimes referred to as the Lakota. The Native Americans hunted and used the approximately 60 million buffalo in North America for food, clothing, dwellings, knives, and other purposes. The Europeans, though, sought to appropriate the area for railroads or farms when they came. Fewer than 1,000 buffalo remained in the entire USA in 1900 after being shot to death by millions of people, along with less than 250,000 Native Americans. Sitting Bull, a legendary Sioux chief, fought against white Europeans who wanted to uproot his people from their homeland and relocate them to Indian territory further west. Despite winning a crucial battle at Little Big Horn in 1876, he was unable to end the conflict. The Battle of Wounded Knee, in which American troops massacred many Sioux men, women, and children, put an end to the Indian Wars in 1890. Following this, Native Americans were forced to reside in exclusive areas known as reservations. A third of the 4.4 million Native Americans still live on reservations today. They frequently live in extreme poverty, and a large number of them are unemployed. Thus, they may abuse alcohol to block out their troubles. Some Native Americans construct casinos where patrons can go to play cards and other games in order to win money. This generates income for the reservations. Other communities reject doing this and forbid alcohol consumption on their reservations. A different group of Native Americans call the Southwest home, where many of the large reservations are located. The Hopi and the Zuni are among the inhabitants of the Southwest. They raise sheep, produce pottery, and create stunning jewelry out of silver and stones with a blue-green hue. Their devotion to their religion is evident in the frequent references to religion in their dancing and the exquisite religious images they create. The largest reservation is around 65,000 square kilometers in size and is home to 200,000 Navajo people. The Navajo produce stunningly colorful blankets. The Navajo language is particularly unique, and the American Army employed Navajo soldiers to transmit covert radio communications that the adversary was unable to decipher during the Second World War. New Americans. The majority of American families at the start of the 19th century were farmers or business owners, and they had emigrated from countries like Britain, Germany, and Scandinavia. But things started to change quickly. Cities expanded, factories were established, and destitute immigrants from other nations flocked in search of employment. Ireland was the source of nearly 5 million immigrants between 1840 and 1900. 5 million additional people immigrated from Italy, and millions more did the same from Russia, Poland, and other Eastern European nations in search of work and freedom. About 27 million people immigrated to America between 1880 and 1924 during the open door policy. They were frequently destitute, adhered to other religions, and had not attended school for a very long time. There was a lot of prejudice against them. At Ellis Island in New York, when immigrants from Europe came, each one was examined for illness and other issues. The Statue of Liberty, whose name stands for freedom, is situated close to Ellis Island. The infamous phrase, "Give me your tired, your poor," is written on it. The statue extended a warm welcome to the destitute and worn-out immigrants who hoped for a better life in the USA. The USA's West experienced prejudice when Chinese immigrants came. After gold was discovered in California in 1848, a large population moved there, including 300,000 Chinese. Many Chinese people remained to work on constructing the new trains. The Chinese did not have civil rights, and after 1882, they were denied entry into the United States along with black people and Native Americans. However, Chinese immigrants started to return in the 20th century, and today there are a lot of Chinese families living in the cities along the West Coast. The Joy Luck Club and other books by the author Amy Tan include stories about her experiences growing up as a Chinese American. Today, Spanish-speaking nations like Mexico and Puerto Rico are the primary sources of immigration to the United States. Since 1980, more than 6 million people have immigrated, and Spanish is now the second language in the country. Irish, Italians, and others from Eastern Europe typically resided in large East or Midwest cities like New York, Boston, or Chicago, and worked in factories. The majority of them became Americans and learned to speak English, but they also wanted to maintain their own way of life. As a result, you can find neighborhoods with names like Little Italy or Chinatown in numerous cities, where the restaurants serve Italian or Chinese cuisine, respectively. On March 17th, St. Patrick's Day is a significant celebration for the Irish in New York, Boston, and Chicago, and Chinese New Year is a significant event in San Francisco. Black Americans. Of the 300 million people living in the USA today, around 39 million are black. They formerly worked in the cotton and tobacco fields while residing primarily in the South. Midway through the 19th century, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, a story of the difficult existence of a slave, became highly well known. In addition to telling the thrilling tale of how a slave family escaped using the Underground Railway, it helped a lot of people realize that keeping slaves was wrong. This was a network of locations where slaves might find assistance rather than an actual railway. They might ask someone in each home for directions to the next safe house. Famous slaves like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman made it possible for numerous other slaves to use the Underground Railroad to go from the South to the North. After making his escape in 1838, Frederick Douglass began to fight for the liberation of other black people. He authored a book on his life after realizing that learning to read and write was a requirement for freedom. Following this, he traveled to Europe to give speeches about slavery before coming back to New York to launch other newspapers. He encouraged black men to enlist in the military and fight for the North during the Civil War, and after the war, he entered government service. In 1849, Harriet Tubman was helped by white people and free blacks as she traveled 140 kilometers to freedom. She went back despite the danger in order to support her family, saying bravely, "I can only die once." She assisted more than 300 slaves in escaping throughout the 1850s. White Southerners were enraged that they had lost the Civil War and that slaves had been set free. They displayed a great deal of prejudice toward black people. Some white people joined the Ku Klux Klan, a gang of men who went out to beat and murder black people while wearing white clothing and masks over their faces. Black men were not given the right to vote until 1870, and even then, they frequently did not use it out of fear. Harper Lee's book To Kill a Mockingbird recounts the terrifying tale of a black man named Tom Robinson in 1930s Alabama. Despite the fact that Tom has done nothing wrong, simply because he is black, people are inclined to assume that he is a criminal. Black people started moving to northern cities to look for work in the 20th century, and as a result, there are currently more black people in the North than the South. However, they had separate lives even in the North. They had to take separate seats on buses and eat in different areas of restaurants in the South. Additionally, students had to attend various schools before 1954. Then, in the 1950s, a churchman by the name of Martin Luther King started to advocate for black people's civil rights. Black people began to flout the law in groups, but not violently. When Rosa Parks in Montgomery, Alabama, refused to yield her seat on a bus to a white man in 1955, she rose to fame. The bus firm suffered significant financial losses, as more black individuals started to refuse to use the buses. Whites-only eateries also started to welcome black patrons. Thousands of people gathered in Washington in August to hear Martin Luther King lecture about the necessity of racial equality between blacks and whites. He began by saying the now famous words, "I have a dream." And in 1964, a law giving black people their rights was approved, and Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. However, after his assassination in Memphis in 1968, conflict broke out in more than 100 cities. Black people's prejudice gradually started to disappear during the 1970s and 1980s, and many of them now hold successful positions in business and government. A black woman like Condoleezza Rice can represent the U.S. government abroad and perhaps consider running for president. However, issues still exist. The majority of those who lost their homes during Hurricane Katrina's devastation of New Orleans in 2005 were black. Many of them waited for government assistance for a very long time. Was it a result of their race? Many people hold this opinion. The government of the USA Congress, the President, and the Supreme Court are the three distinct but equal branches of the American government. In 1920, women gained the right to vote, and now all Americans have the right to vote at age 18. The right to free speech is one of the rights that all Americans are guaranteed by the Constitution. Congress enacts legislation. The Senate and the House of Representatives are the two houses of Congress. Two representatives from each state make up the 100-member Senate, which is elected every 6 years. The 435 members of the House of Representatives are chosen for terms of just 2 years. California and other populous states have more representatives. There is only one representative for small states like Wyoming and Delaware. Every state casts one vote for the president. The states with the most inhabitants become particularly important because each state has the same number of votes as its representatives and senators. Florida has 25 votes. Thus, even though only 51% of Florida voters chose George Bush in 2000, he received all 25 of those votes. The president is the government official with the most responsibility. He is the leader of the nation, just like a royal or queen, and he is also in charge of the army. Up until now, the president has always been a guy. No one can serve as president for more than 8 years, and he is only elected for a 4-year term. He appoints the Supreme Court's judges and has the power to veto laws passed by Congress, but Congress has the same power. In Washington, D.C., he resides there and works there. The Supreme Court, which comprises 9 judges and is the most significant court in the nation, determines what the meaning of the laws are. They may even claim that the president did something improperly or that Congress passed a law that is incorrect. Each state has its own government in addition to the federal government in Washington. States may have extremely distinct laws from one another. They say very different things about things like how old you have to be to drive a car or get married, for instance. Additionally, different states have varying criminal penalties. For example, whereas some states require execution for murder, others just impose prison time. Puerto Rico, an island in the Caribbean, is neither a state nor an independent nation. Puerto Ricans are not allowed to vote in U.S. elections and do not pay U.S. taxes. The Republicans and the Democrats are the two most significant political parties. Republicans believe that taxes should be low because they want individuals to work hard to better themselves. Democrats believe that taxes are necessary because the government must aid the underprivileged, but sometimes it's difficult to tell the two apart. A map of the United States after the 2000 election revealed that the Republican states were in the South and throughout the middle, while the Democratic states were on the east and west coasts and in the northern Great Lakes region. The absence of a king or queen makes Americans happy, and they believe that anyone may become president. It is simpler to become president if you come from a wealthy family since you need a lot of money to inform people about yourself and your views. John Adams and John Quincy Adams, the second and sixth presidents, were father and son, while the Bush family has had 2 presidents in modern times. George Bush served as president from 1989 to 1993, and his son George W. Bush took over as president in 2001. Jeb Bush, George W. Bush's brother, was also serving as Florida's governor at the same time. Other families have come close to having two presidents. Many believe that Hillary Clinton will succeed her husband Bill in becoming president, much as President Kennedy's brother Robert lost his bid for the presidency when he was assassinated in 1968. She will become the first female president if she succeeds. A president must also have effective public speaking skills. The 41st president and former actor Ronald Reagan was able to accomplish this. He was elected governor of California in 1967 and served as president from 1981. Some individuals think that movie stars will become successful politicians more frequently in the future. In 2003, another actor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was elected governor of California. Barack Obama was the first president of African American origin, who was twice elected as President of the America between 2009 and 2016. President Obama was considered to be one of the most influential presidents in U.S. history. His successfully handling the economy and the affairs of U.S. at home and at international level made him the most admired president. His crown jewel achievement was the Osama bin Laden's death. After Obama came the Donald Trump, whose policies mainly focused on improving U.S. internal affairs and economy, which deemed necessary but proved fatal for his second run. Hence, Joe Biden is president now. World Wars and the Roaring Twenties. This chapter delves into the transformative period encompassing World War I, the Roaring Twenties, and the lead-up to World War II. These decades witnessed profound social, cultural, and political shifts that shaped the modern United States. World War I, which began in 1914, marked the United States' entry onto the global stage as a major world power. The war presented a challenging time for the nation, as it faced issues of neutrality, preparedness, and the impact of the war on the home front. In 1917, the United States officially joined the Allies, contributing significant military and economic resources that helped turn the tide of the war in favor of the Allies. Following the war, the 1920s ushered in a period of cultural dynamism and economic prosperity, known as the Roaring Twenties. Technological advancements, such as the widespread adoption of automobiles, radio, and motion pictures, transformed American society and popular culture. The decade was characterized by jazz music, flapper fashion, the Harlem Renaissance, and a spirit of liberation and consumerism. However, beneath the surface of this exuberance, there were underlying tensions and disparities. Prohibition, enacted through the 18th Amendment in 1920, led to the rise of illegal alcohol production and distribution, giving rise to organized crime and fueling public dissatisfaction. The stock market crash of 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression exposed the fragility of the nation's economic system, leading to widespread unemployment, poverty, and social upheaval. World War II and the post-war era. Let's explore the impact of World War II and its aftermath on the United States. The war, which began in 1939 with the invasion of Poland, drew the United States into a global conflict against the Axis powers of Germany, Japan, and Italy. The attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan in 1941 propelled the United States into the war, galvanizing public support for the war effort. The nation mobilized its industrial and military resources, leading to the mass production of weapons, ammunition, and equipment. The United States played a crucial role in the eventual defeat of the Axis powers, contributing to significant military victories such as the Normandy landings and the Pacific Island hopping campaigns. The war had a profound impact on American society and the economy. The home front experienced rationing of goods, women entering the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and the internment of Japanese Americans. The war effort also fostered scientific advancements, including the development of atomic weapons through the Manhattan Project. The conclusion of World War II brought about a new era for the United States. The nation emerged as a superpower, playing a pivotal role in the establishment of the United Nations and the rebuilding of war-torn Europe through initiatives such as the Marshall Plan. The post-war period also saw the beginning of the Cold War, a period of intense ideological rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union, characterized by political, economic, and military tensions. At home, the post-war era witnessed significant social changes. The GI Bill of Rights provided educational and housing benefits to returning veterans, fueling a surge in higher education and the growth of the middle class. The civil rights movement gained momentum as African Americans and other marginalized communities fought for equal rights and an end to racial segregation. The Vietnam War and Counterculture. Let's understand the narratives on the era of the Vietnam War and the rise of the counterculture movement in the 1960s and 1970s. The United States' involvement in the Vietnam War, fueled by Cold War fears of communism, sparked widespread protests, cultural clashes, and political divisions. As the war escalated, opposition to the conflict grew, fueled by the draft, the televised images of the war's brutality, and the moral and ethical dilemmas it presented. Anti-war demonstrations, such as the Kent State shootings in 1970, heightened tensions and further polarized the nation. The Vietnam War coincided with a broader cultural and social transformation known as the counterculture movement. The counterculture challenged traditional social norms and values, advocating for peace, individual freedom, and experimentation with drugs, music, and alternative lifestyles. The emergence of iconic figures such as the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and Jimi Hendrix reflected the spirit of rebellion and the desire for change. The counterculture movement also intersected with the civil rights movement and the feminist movement, contributing to a broader wave of social activism and calls for equality and justice. The movement's influence extended beyond the 1960s and left a lasting impact on American culture, inspiring subsequent generations to challenge established norms and fight for social change. 14. Watergate and the Crisis of Confidence. The Watergate scandal and the subsequent crisis of confidence gripped the nation in the 1970s. The Watergate scandal, which unfolded from 1972 to 1974, was a political scandal that involved illegal activities and abuses of power by officials within the Nixon administration. The scandal began with the break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. Investigations revealed a web of criminal activities, including wiretapping, campaign finance violations, and obstruction of justice. As the investigations progressed, evidence pointed to the involvement of high-ranking officials, leading to a constitutional crisis. The release of the smoking gun tape, which recorded President Richard Nixon discussing the cover-up of the Watergate break-in, proved to be a turning point. Faced with imminent impeachment, Nixon became the first U.S. president to resign from office on August 8, 1974. His resignation marked a significant moment in American history, highlighting the importance of accountability and the rule of law. The Watergate scandal had far-reaching consequences, impacting public trust in government institutions and leading to a period of national introspection and re-evaluation. The crisis of confidence extended beyond politics, encompassing economic concerns, energy crises, and questions about America's role in the world. Reaganomics and the end of the Cold War. The presidency of Ronald Reagan, which began in 1981, had a lasting impact on American politics and the global stage. Reagan implemented a conservative economic policy known as Reaganomics, which emphasized tax cuts, deregulation, and reduced government spending. Reaganomics aimed to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and curb inflation. While it led to some economic growth and a reinvigoration of American capitalism, it also contributed to rising income inequality and increased national debt. The Reagan era witnessed a significant shift in the country's economic and political landscape, with conservative principles shaping policy debates for years to come. Reagan's presidency also coincided with a pivotal moment in the Cold War. The Reagan administration pursued a policy of increased military spending and confrontational rhetoric towards the Soviet Union. However, in his second term, Reagan engaged in diplomatic efforts, resulting in arms control agreements such as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty. These efforts, along with internal pressures and economic challenges, ultimately contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War. Technological advancements and the information age. The rapid technological advancements helped to reshape American society in the late 20th century. The rise of computers, the internet, and telecommunications revolutionized communication, commerce, and daily life, ushering in the information age. The development of personal computers, led by companies like Apple and Microsoft, brought computing power and accessibility to individuals and businesses. The internet, initially a military and academic project, evolved into a global network that connected people worldwide, transforming communication, research, and commerce. Technological advancements also had profound implications for industries such as entertainment, with the advent of digital media, streaming services, and online platforms. The rise of social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram revolutionized how people interacted and shared information, further shaping the way we communicate and form connections. The information age brought both opportunities and challenges. It created new industries and job opportunities, while also contributing to concerns about privacy, cybersecurity, and the digital divide. Challenges and progress in the 21st century. Understanding the present day through the examining the challenges and progress that define America in the 21st century. The nation faces a range of complex issues including economic inequality, climate change, racial tensions, healthcare reform, and evolving international dynamics. Economic inequality remains a significant concern, with wealth and income disparities widening in recent decades. The Great Recession of 2008 highlighted the vulnerabilities of the financial system and led to increased scrutiny of Wall Street practices. Efforts to address income inequality and promote economic opportunity have been ongoing, with debates centering around tax policies, minimum wage increases, and the need for comprehensive economic reforms. Climate change has emerged as a pressing global issue, with the United States being a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. The Paris Agreement, signed in 2015, aimed to combat climate change through international cooperation, but the subsequent withdrawal of the United States under the Trump administration created challenges and uncertainties. Efforts to address climate change continue, with renewed commitments from the Biden administration to rejoin the Paris Agreement and pursue clean energy initiatives. Racial tensions and social justice movements have once again come to the forefront of American society. Incidents of police brutality, such as the killing of George Floyd in 2020, have sparked nationwide protests and calls for police reform and racial equality. The Black Lives Matter movement has gained significant momentum, highlighting the need for systemic change and an end to racial discrimination. Healthcare reform has been a contentious issue, with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, ACA, in 2010, representing a significant step towards expanding access to health care. However, debates over the efficacy and affordability of the ACA continue as policymakers grapple with finding a balance between ensuring health care coverage for all Americans and controlling rising health care costs. Internationally, the United States has faced evolving challenges and geopolitical shifts. The rise of China as a global economic and military power has led to a re-evaluation of American foreign policy and trade relations. Ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, such as the war in Afghanistan, have raised questions about the nation's military engagements and the long-term effectiveness of interventionist policies. In recent years, social and cultural issues have also played a prominent role in shaping the American landscape. Debates surrounding immigration policies, LGBTQ+ rights, gun control, and gender equality have sparked passionate discussions and political movements, reflecting the diversity of perspectives and the ongoing struggle for equality and social progress. Living in the USA. Many people who have never been to the USA are familiar with it because to movies and television shows. Then there is the art of Edward Hopper, whose depictions of typical American citizens, streets, and homes in both the city and the country evoke memories of classic movies. But how does daily living actually work in America? Almost everyone in the world lives more comfortably than the majority of Americans who hold employment do. They typically work a 40-hour week and have 2 weeks off annually, in addition to special occasions like Thanksgiving and Christmas. In 60% of households, both the husband and wife are employed. Despite the fact that more than 40% of the land is farmed, few Americans work as farmers, and there are fewer Americans employed in manufacturing than in the past. Today, the majority of occupations are found in institutions like banks, hotels, and retail outlets. Life is difficult if you do not have a job. Around 6% of Americans do not. You receive a small amount of money from the government, but it is insufficient to cover all of your expenses. How many people in America are poor? Around 13% of Americans live in poverty. However, this percentage rises to 25% for Black people and 22% for Hispanics. The dollar, which is made up of 100 cents, is the unit of currency in the USA. A nickel costs 5 cents, a dime costs 10, and a quarter costs 25 cents. People tip extra cash on top of the bill in cabs, restaurants, and other establishments. Many workers would struggle to make ends meet without this additional income. Instead of using kilos and kilometers, Americans utilize pounds and miles. Similar to how dates are written in Britain, the 4th of July is written as 7-4 rather than 4-7. Sadly, on September 11th, 2001, the day we remember as 9/11, the rest of the world discovered how Americans pronounce dates. Due to the size of the USA, the time varies as you move from one side to the other. It is 11 a.m. in Kansas, Central Time, 10 a.m. in Arizona, Mountain Time, and 9 a.m. in Seattle, Pacific Time, when it is 12 p.m. in New York, Eastern Time. Additionally, Hawaii is at 7 a.m., and Alaska is at 8 a.m. from the 1920s until the 1970s. The lives of typical families is depicted in Norman Rockwell's paintings. They provide us a glimpse of small-town life, which is still present today, despite the fact that they are frequently too pleasant to be real. The majority of Americans, 2-3, own their homes, many of which have gardens. More than 75% of Americans drive to work, and at least 85% of families own a car. Additionally, they drive to drive-in restaurants, coffee shops, and even banks. Henry Ford, the man behind the renowned Ford automobiles, was born close to Detroit in Michigan. His Model T, 1908, was the first automobile that was affordable for the people. Fords are easy to drive, they claimed, and by 1918, Model Ts made up half of all vehicles in the USA. A growing number of Americans now own quite large vehicles known as SUVs. No religion is permitted in schools, and there is no official state religion in the USA. Instead, American kids swear an oath to the flag every morning. But more than 80% of Americans attend a Christian church, and Christianity is quite significant in the USA, especially in the South. If a book deviates from the Christian account of the creation of the world, it may not be permitted in schools in several states. Black church leaders like Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson have fought tenaciously for the rights of Black people. Some churches are exclusively for Black people. The Latter-day Saints, sometimes known as Mormons, are a sizable religious community with a concentration in Utah. They oppose alcohol and tobacco and have very strong opinions on how to dress. Americans have the option to stay at home and watch television if they don't feel like going out. Almost every household has a TV, and the average family watches more than 7 hours a day. There are more than 10,000 TV channels, and the majority of them are owned by corporations rather than the government. All across the world, American TV programs are sold. Although there are more than 1,500 daily publications, the majority only cover one city. 5 million copies of USA Today, the most widely read newspaper, are sold each day. Newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post, as well as the periodicals Time and Newsweek, are available worldwide. The supermarket initially arrived in America, and many stores now are open 24 hours a day, so it goes without saying that Americans love to shop. The United States is home to some of the largest shopping malls in the world, including the 1.25 million square meter Mall of America in Minneapolis, which has over 500 stores. 32 Boeing 747 aircraft could fit inside of it. Americans often do not pay to attend school, but they do have to pay to see a doctor or visit a hospital. Although schools and legislation vary from state to state, everyone in most regions attends school for around 12 years. The years are referred to as grades. Grades 1 through 5 are considered elementary school. Grades 6 through S are considered middle school, and grades 9 through 12 are considered high school. About 85% of students attend a prom to commemorate graduating from high school. They also create a yearbook that includes pictures and biographical details of every student in their class. Life at an American high school has been shown in movies like American Graffiti and The Breakfast Club. About half of high school graduates continue their education for an additional 2 to 4 years. Among the renowned universities in the United States are Berkeley in California, Harvard, and Yale in the East. Sports are enjoyed by most Americans, and football, basketball, and baseball are the most popular. In American football, players carry the ball more often than they use their feet, which makes it extremely different from European football. But baseball is the national pastime in the USA. In the movie Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner plays an Iowan farmer who dreams of playing baseball for the Chicago White Sox and builds a field for them on his property. 2 teams of 9 players each play a game of baseball. The first team members attempt to hit the ball while running around a large square from corner to corner. The second team in line's players catch the ball. Before the opposing side can get the ball to a corner, players attempt to circle the square completely. The second team has the opportunity to hit the ball when 3 players are declared out. The Boston Red Sox, New York Yankees, and Los Angeles Dodgers are a few well-known sports franchises. Babe Ruth was arguably the greatest baseball player in history. He played first for the Boston Red Sox and subsequently the New York Yankees. He was born in 1895. He passed away in 1948, yet his memory lives on. 19. Eating and drinking the American way. What foods eat Americans? Nearly every nation in the globe has eateries that provide American fast food. French fries, hamburgers, hot dogs, and chips are among the most well-known examples. Many Americans are overweight, perhaps as a result of eating too much fast food. Nowadays, many American families have dinner separately during the day rather than sitting down together. Pies and ice cream are popular examples of sweet cuisine. In Vermont, a New England state, the renowned Ben & Jerry's ice cream was born. However, as people get more interested in eating healthily, they either make better food choices or decide to stop eating meat. You can eat an American breakfast if you travel to the USA. There are several other methods to cook eggs. Sunny side up refers to the yellow being on top, while over easy refers to the yellow being below but still soft. You can have as much coffee with your breakfast as you'd like for the same cost. In the USA, you can actually drink coffee all day long. Of course, Starbucks is located there, and since the 1990s, it has revolutionized the way that coffee is consumed worldwide. Today, you can go to a coffee shop anywhere in the world and select from a huge choice of coffees. What other truly American beverages are available? John Pemberton, an American, created Coca-Cola for the first time in 1886. One of the most well-known words in the world today, Coke is distributed in 195 countries. Excellent American wine is also available from the West Coast, particularly California. However, Americans must be 21 years old before they may purchase alcohol. In many states, smoking is prohibited in public venues like bars, restaurants, and workplaces. Alcohol use was prohibited in the USA during Prohibition from 1920 to 1933, although many people still desired to partake. As a result, criminals like Al Capone imported booze and made a lot of money. You may find delicious food from many other cultures, including Chinese, Mexican, and Italian cuisines, in American restaurants. Immigrants brought their own favorite foods with them when they immigrated to the United States. These then evolved into new American-specific cooking styles. For instance, Texan Mexican cuisine is similar to Mexican cuisine but uses more meat. Cajun cuisine is hot meal from Louisiana with odd names like jambalaya and gumbo. Black families in the South like cooking what is known as soul food. Typically, it consists of pork or fish with green vegetables, sweet potatoes, cornbread, and maybe pie as a side dish. 20. Music from America. People listen to American music all across the world. Black American slaves' songs served as its opening act. Black slaves in the South performed call and response labor songs and religious songs. This is similar to a musical discussion when one person sings and another responds. Following the Civil War, slaves started to narrate their own stories in music known as the blues, especially in the region around the Mississippi River. It was structured similarly, with the singer singing and the instrument responding. The songs depict a depressing tale of risk and labor, and the word blue can also signify sad. Black people relocated to the North during the start of the 20th century in search of employment. They traveled to locations like Chicago and Detroit with their music. Electric guitars were first used by musicians including Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, John Lee Hooker, and Howlin' Wolf. When vocalists like Bessie Smith rose to fame in the 1920s and 1930s, blues records became extremely popular. Elvis Presley, a Mississippi native, was the first white performer to sing blues-inspired songs in the 1950s. Soul was created in the 1960s by musicians like Marvin Gaye and Otis Redding from the traditional blues. Many motor vehicle industries are located in the city of Detroit, which is also where the term Motown, Motortown, for soul music originated. In the 1960s and 1970s, fans all over the world listened to Motown artists like Diana Ross, Stevie Wonder, and the Jackson 5. In the deep south of the USA, in New Orleans, on the Mississippi River, jazz was created, likely starting in the 1830s with the music and dance of black slaves. Jelly Roll Morton, a musician, claimed to have been the first to play jazz in 1897, but it's unclear exactly when it started. Jazz music gained worldwide popularity once it traveled to New York and Paris in the 1930s. Black musicians like Louis Armstrong became well known in Chicago during the 1920s. Jazz was a significant element of American culture, according to composer George Gershwin, who also composed music for theater and films. He incorporated jazz into works like Rhapsody in Blue. The swing music of the large dance bands like Glenn Miller was introduced to Europe by American soldiers fighting in the Second World War. Although not jazz, this was nevertheless a poor piece of music. Great jazz musicians like Miles Davis, Stan Getz, and John Coltrane are today recognized on a global scale, and jazz is written, sung, and played in many nations. However, the original location of everything, New Orleans, is no longer as thrilling as it once was. The town was well known for Mardi Gras, which was a fantastic street festival with garish costumes, music, and dancing. However, because the city is located on terrain that is lower than the sea, Hurricane Katrina in 2005 submerged its streets and residences. Numerous thousand people perished, and the city suffered significant damage. Will New Orleans ever be the center of music again? The musicians hope so, and many continue to go to New Orleans each year to perform at the Jazz Festival. The kind of music known as country, sometimes known as country and western, originated in Nashville, Tennessee. The Scottish, Irish, and English immigrants who settled in the Appalachian Mountains gave birth to it through their music. When Jimmie Rodgers and the Carter family released the first country records and the Grand Ole Opry radio program debuted in Nashville in the 1920s, country music truly started to gain popularity. Nashville is still a hub for recording music, and visitors may check out the Country Music Hall of Fame. Dolly Parton, one of the most well-known female country singers, who has also had appearances in the movies Steel Magnolias and 9 to S. Millions of recordings were sold by the Man in Black Johnny Cash in the 1960s and 1970s. and he was still well liked when he passed away in the early life of Johnny, was the subject of the popular 2005 movie Walk the Line. Rap, a new kind of music, sprang to popularity in New York in the 1990s. It was written by Black and Puerto Rican individuals and described a perilous existence in the streets, full with violence. Rappers don't sing, but instead speak quickly over music. Rappers like Eminem, Snoop Dogg, and Missy Elliott are well known. Some great American cities. The Atlantic coast is home to some of the biggest cities in America. One of the oldest cities in the United States is Boston, located in the Northeast, where the War for Independence first took place in the 17th century. You can visit the location where the tea was thrown into the sea and walk the Freedom Trail nearby. The oldest institution in the USA, Harvard, which opened its doors in I-636, is located just a few kilometers away in the city of Cambridge. Cambridge is home to the renowned Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. The Kennedy family was arguably the most well-known in Boston during the 20th century. They were Irish. Like many other Boston families, they amassed enormous wealth, and in 1961, Democrat John F. Kennedy was elected President of the United States. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, he stated at the time. Kennedy was young and well-liked with his stunning wife Jacqueline, but regrettably, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas in 1963. The largest city in the USA is New York. It is an excellent location for dining, shopping, and entertainment. Additionally, it is where the United Nations is headquartered, and its offices are in a stunning glass building. However, the World Trade Center's two even taller skyscrapers are what people remember most because on September 11, 2001, two planes collided with them, killing almost 3,000 people. Once again, the most recognizable skyscraper in the city is the Empire State Building. It is 443 meters tall, has 102 stories, and has been in several movies, including King Kong. Another tourist hotspot is the Statue of Liberty. By boat is the best way to view it. It is 93 meters tall. It was a gift from the French people in honor of the USA's 100th birthday, and many tourists only visit New York to shop. The largest stores, Macy's and Bloomingdale's, are where you can find everything. Beautiful jewelry is available at Tiffany's on Fifth Avenue, but it is incredibly pricey. The theater district is centered on Times Square and Broadway, and artists and musicians have called Greenwich Village home since the 1940s. The beautiful Metropolitan Museum of Art is the largest of the several museums in New York. You can also visit Central Park, a sizable green space in the center of Manhattan's hectic streets, if you grow tired of the city. The capital of the USA is Washington, D.C. It was constructed in a unique location, the District of Columbia, D.C., on property that belonged to the states of Virginia and Maryland. The absence of skyscrapers sets it apart from most American cities. The Capitol, which houses the Senate and House of Representatives, is the city's tallest structure. The White House, where the president resides, as well as museums of history, art, and aviation, are all open to the public. The historic Georgetown neighborhood contains some of the city's most stunning homes. The historic cities of Savannah, Georgia, and Charleston, South Carolina, both of which have gorgeous ancient homes, are located much further south. They appear to be unchanged from 150 or more years ago. However, not every southern city is old. One of the busiest airports in the world is located in the large, contemporary city of Atlanta, Georgia. People believe it to be a comfortable city to live in, and there are many employment available. Chicago is sometimes referred to as the Windy City because it is located in the state of Illinois, far from the coast. Following the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the city's first truly tall structures. The highest structure in the USA right now is the Sears Tower in Chicago, which is more than 500 meters high. You can view examples of Frank Lloyd Wright's homes in Chicago, where he created exquisite homes and other structures. Chicago boasts industries, stores, museums, and restaurants like any other large city, but only Chicago is home to the renowned Wrigley Field baseball stadium. Since the 1980s, Seattle on the West Coast has grown to be one of the nation's most favored cities. Starbucks introduced the trend for Italian coffee shops here around 1985. It served as the setting for new music by bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana in the 1990s. One of the richest men in the world and Microsoft founder Bill Gates was born in Seattle. Seattle residents are the subject of movies and television shows. A formerly peaceful city has grown busy and more expensive. Casinos abound in the hot, arid state of Nevada's Las Vegas. There, playing cards or other games, people gain and lose tens of thousands of dollars. Additionally, people travel there to swiftly and easily get married. A man dressed like Elvis Presley is welcome to attend your wedding if you'd like. California. Over 30 million people, more than any other state, call California home. It is a state of differences and is the third largest state in size after Texas and Alaska. Mount Whitney, which is 4,420 meters high and is located in the state's east, is the tallest mountain in the USA outside of Alaska. Additionally, Death Valley in California, which is 86 meters below sea level, is the lowest and driest place in the United States. There, the warmest day recorded was in 1913 at 56.7 degrees Celsius, and there are years when it never rains at all. But the state's northern region is very chilly and rainy. The tallest trees in the world, the huge redwood trees, grow here. The tallest one is meters. The region of Napa Valley, where exceptional wines are produced, is also in the north. California produces more fruits and vegetables than any other U.S. state, but it is also renowned for its computer manufacturing facilities. Apple's headquarters are in California, where Hewlett-Packard damaged their business. Many people consider San Francisco to be one of the most beautiful cities in the entire globe. People who came here in 1849 in search of gold were known as 49ers. At that time, Levi Strauss was the manufacturer of the first pair of jeans. The city expanded quickly, but an earthquake and the subsequent fire in 1906 almost completely destroyed it. Everyone is aware that there would eventually be another major earthquake after the one that killed 62 people in 1989. But because life in San Francisco is enjoyable, 800,000 Americans still call the city home. Two groups of people who desired a life distinct from that of the average person came together in San Francisco. The beatniks of the 1950s, who dressed all black and had no interest in employment or monetary gain, included writers like Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac. Next, hippies arrived in San Francisco in the 1960s. They wanted a world of peace and love, and they dressed brightly and had long hair. The Summer of Love featured songs about peace and love that advised young people to wear flowers in their hair when they visited San Francisco. The 1937-built Golden Gate Bridge, which connects Marin County and San Francisco, is another notable landmark in the city. Every year, over 40 million trips are made across it. It is 67 meters above the water and 2.7 kilometers long. From the bridge, you can see Alcatraz, an island that served as a prison up until Los Angeles, the second largest city in the United States, had a population of 3.8 million. Driving from one side to the other can take hours, but practically everyone drives. The amount of cars indicates that the city has a problem with polluted air. Criminality is a concern in some areas of the city as well. However, tourists continue to travel to see locations like Hollywood and Beverly Hills. In 1911, the first motion picture was created in a former orange grove in Hollywood. The original movies, starring Rudolph Valentino, Charlie Chaplin, and Buster Keaton, were silent. However, sound was added to movies in 1927. Famous actors including Humphrey Bogart, Clark Gable, and Katharine Hepburn starred in movies like It Happened One Night, Casablanca, and The Philadelphia Story in the 1930s and 1940s. The classic crime novels of Dashiell Hammett and Raymond Chandler, both from California, served as the inspiration for some of the era's best movies. Bogart portrayed the investigator Philip Marlowe in The Big Sleep, which Chandler wrote about. Today, movies are a massive business. They cost millions of dollars to produce, but they have enormous potential for profit. Visit Mann's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard to see where movie stars have carved out the shapes of their hands and feet. You can go to Universal Studios outside the city, or Paramount Studios in Hollywood, where the Godfather movies were produced. At both locations, you can experience an earthquake and see King Kong and Jurassic Park. The mansions of prominent celebrities are visible from the road in Beverly Hills. Walt Disney movies from 1928 included Mickey Mouse for the first time. Disney passed away in 1966, but his firm is still producing hugely successful movies like Pirates of the Caribbean. The most popular tourist destination in California is Disneyland. It is in the southern region of the state, in Orange County. When you go to Disneyland, you will see Mickey Mouse and his pals around the grounds. You can embark on an Indiana Jones or Tarzan adventure, visit the Sleeping Beauty Castle, or take a riverboat cruise. 23. Beautiful places to visit. More than 3/4 of Americans live in cities or towns, including some of the largest cities in the world. Due to the fact that not much has changed since the first Europeans came, there are also certain areas that are extremely empty. Some of them have been preserved by the government as national parks, stunning natural areas where people are not permitted to construct homes or factories. America's stunning parks have been captured on camera by numerous artists. Ansel Adams, one of the most well-known, was born in San Francisco a few years before the 1906 earthquake. Yosemite in Northern California, a park since 1890, and the California coast were two of his favorite locations. You reach Oregon and Washington as you make your way north from California. These states have large forests and tall mountains, but they are chilly and moist and quite lovely. Many national parks, like Mount Rainier and Crater Lake, can be found here. The beautiful Rocky Mountains are located in Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, Idaho, and Utah, and make for ideal vacation destinations. Visitors can enjoy hiking, climbing, fishing, hunting, and riding horses here. In areas with a lot of snow, like Aspen, you can engage in winter activities as well. Denver is the only significant city in the Rockies. Yellowstone Park, which is located in the states of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, is also part of the Rocky Mountains. It is renowned for the Old Faithful Geyser, which blasts hot water up to 55 meters into the air. The state capital of Utah, Salt Lake City, is located close to a lake that is far saltier than the ocean. You won't be able to stay underwater if you try to swim in this lake. Arizona is a hot, arid state south of the Rockies, and its landscape features a rainbow of hues in addition to brown and green, including red, pink, orange, and blue. The Grand Canyon is the most well-known location in Arizona. The Colorado River carved a deep valley through the rock many thousands of years ago, creating this valley. With rocks in unusual shapes, it is currently 1,600 meters deep, 446 kilometers long, and between 0.4 and 24 kilometers wide. You can take a 2-day hike to the river, but you'll need to bring lots of water with you to stay hydrated. New Mexico is another hot, dry state, similar to Arizona, where farming is challenging and the general populace is poor. To live in and near Santa Fe and Taos, however, many artists have migrated from various regions of the United States. Georgia O'Keeffe was one of the first, and her work is featured in a museum in Santa Fe. Visitors to the Badlands National Park in South Dakota pay tribute to the Sioux who fought and lost their lives at Wounded Knee, while Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of Dakota is renowned for featuring the likenesses of 4 American presidents: Theodore Roosevelt, Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln. In total, from 1927 to 1941, it took 14 years. When Gary Grant tries to flee from the mountain, you can almost see them in the Hitchcock film North by Northwest. The 5 Great Lakes, a major passageway for ships traveling from the Atlantic to the Midwest via the St. Lawrence Seaway, are where Canada and the USA converge. Between Lake Ontario and Erie are the renowned Niagara Falls. The height of these waterfalls is 51 meters. You can take a boat journey to observe them from below, or you can view them from above from Canada or the United States. More than any other set of lakes in the world, Lakes Erie, Ontario, Huron, Michigan, and Superior collectively cover 244,108 square kilometers. Traveling there in the summer is nearly like traveling to the ocean because you can sail a boat or relax on the beach. But it gets really cold in the winter. The state of Louisiana, formerly known as Trench, is located thousands of kilometers south of the Great Lakes. The 778-kilometer-long Mississippi River served as a crucial conduit between the North and the South in the 18th century. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, 1876, and Huckleberry Finn, 1884, are two excellent tales by Mark Twain about life along and on the river. Mississippi was the home of several notable authors, including Tennessee Williams and William Faulkner, in addition to Louisiana. New England is the collective name for the states of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Because the leaves on the trees turn golden, orange, red, and gold in the autumn, or fall, as Americans refer to it, it is a good time to travel to New England. The greatest time to view the colors is around October, 24. Hot and cold, big and small. The Sunshine State moniker refers to Florida in the far southeast because of how warm and sunny it is there. There are orange groves, and tourists come for beach vacations. They can also go to the Kennedy Space Center and Walt Disney World. The Everglades are a region unique to Florida and the United States. There are numerous trees, plants, animals, and birds that are unique to this region of America on the extremely moist ground. But for older folks looking for a warm climate, Florida is highly popular. This entails building new homes and roads, and doing so has resulted in extensive land destruction. There are also an increasing number of factories, and some people are upset that the state's magnificent wildlife is disappearing because of the state's polluted air and water. Cold and alone. The largest state in the Union, Alaska, is separated from the other states by Canada. Alaska used to be rich from fishing, hunting, and gold discoveries. Today, though, it is significant for its oil. Alaska is home to Mount McKinley, the tallest mountain in North America, 6,194 meters. An excellent method to get there from Seattle is via boat. Since it is so far north, it is exceedingly cold and gloomy for the majority of the day in the winter when most visitors arrive. However, if you're fortunate, you might catch a glimpse of the aurora borealis, which bathes the sky in brilliant hues. After Alaska, Texas is the largest state. There are still cowboys working there, but Texas is a wealthy state now because of its oil, just like Alaska. Little Rhode Island, to the east of Connecticut, is the smallest state in the USA. Each year, there are 3 sizable music festivals in Newport, Rhode Island. Austin, the state capital of Texas, is renowned for its music. Along with Bruce Springsteen, Van Morrison, and country singer Kinky Friedman, who also writes very humorous crime novels, they all performed there. Janis Joplin also sang there. Hawaii's tourist islands are located far from the other U.S. states. Many Americans travel there to take advantage of the beaches, including the well-known Waikiki Beach. Despite the large number of visitors, it is possible to find quieter areas where you can view trees, waterfalls, as well as many exotic plants and birds. Sadly, there are only 9,000 real Hawaiians, but about 1/3 of island residents are mixed race. However, there are more intriguing and thrilling locations in the USA than can be covered in a single video. Choose between a crowded city or a serene national park, chilly mountains or a warm sea, sports or shopping, and then plan your own American journey.